This is Mark Strassman, reporter with Etopia Media's California Politics Today. We're speaking by video conference with Dana Cody, who's the executive director of the Life Legal Defense Foundation and one of the attorneys in the lawsuit being brought against the ICOC on the grounds that it is not under the control of the state of California. Welcome to Etopia Media's California Politics Today.
Thank you.
Can you tell us briefly where things are procedurally in this mammoth and long-running case?
Yes. Actually, it's been pretty short.
Okay. All right. Tell us about that.
We had trial. It began the 27th of February. It was over the 2nd of March. The post-trial briefs were submitted on March the 9th. And on the 15th, the replies were submitted, and it's under submission. I'm expecting a decision from the court within just a few weeks. I mean, this is purely speculation on my part, but the judge moved us along so quickly, I think she'll give us a quick decision.
Okay. Well, why did you and the other side, the Attorney General of California, end up filing written briefs instead of dramatically arguing your case in open court?
Well, it's hard to dramatically argue something that's totally boring.
All right. It's more suited for the written word. Okay.
Sarcastically, but it's a lot of detail from transcripts and the law and case law, and we ended up actually not calling any witnesses. David Llewellyn called a witness. The Attorney General called a few witnesses. But we pretty much feel like our case was made through facts that we got out of depositions and ICO transcripts. So, to argue that in court, it's just better to do it by brief.
Okay, and what go ahead.
Very thorough, and we'll read our evidence, and we're sure that the point will get to her.
Okay, in a previous Etopia Media California Politics Day article, which we'll link to, most of those briefs are included, and people can read them and see how boring they are for themselves.
We think briefs are riveting.
All right. What's the fundamental question that Judge Sabra needs to decide?
Well, with respect to our case, the fundamental question is whether or not the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee is under the exclusive management control of the state. And we've said all along that they're not. And we make this point in our brief that to the bitter end, the defendants say that the pure question of law, and they cite a case saying it's a pure question of law. And our response to that is there are a lot of factual things in the transcripts and depositions making our case for us, things that Robert Klein has said himself. And in the case they cite, it was a pure question of law with respect to that case. Here, the court says, a pure question of law here, meaning the case the opinion was about. And so they've miscited the case and continually try to make it an issue of law. And clearly it's not. The court ruled as a matter of law that nobody's case would be dismissed, and so the facts were introduced at trial.
Okay. Now, the question is whether or not the ICOC, the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, is under the control of the state of California. Doesn't its very name, the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, contradict its position that it isn't an independent committee?
Well, yes. If you go back and you look at the campaign materials, if you closely listen to things that Robert Klein and others have said since the proposition passed, they want it to be independent from the government, and they want it to be independent from the government because they don't want their so-called important scientific work to be interrupted or impacted by the political culture.
So are they trying to have their cake and eat it too by taking the money and being independent, but then when they come to court challenged by you, they say they're not independent?
I think that's exactly what they're doing.
Okay. Do you care to speculate about how the judge is going to rule?
Well, no, because I think I think we have a good case. I think the evidence that we've pointed the judge to proves our case. One thing that the Attorney General has continually done in defending the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee is saying that the CIRM was created in the Constitution, but they're not a defendant in our case. The ICOC is the defendant in our case. So they try to deflect the real issue, and they throw out that red herring that the CIRM was created in the California Constitution. Well, that's great. We've never challenged the CIRM. We've never said the CIRM can't spend money. What we've said is that the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee is not under the exclusive management and control of the state. They were created statutorily in Prop 71, and they should not be able to spend money because they're not under the control of the state.
Okay. So you don't want to predict how the judge is going to rule.
Well, I think she'll probably rule against us. Just sort of my intuition.
Okay.
I think our briefs are great.
Is there a road to appeal if she?
Most definitely.
Where would the case go if you appealed?
It would go to the State Court of Appeal. It escapes me right now what district it is, but that district for the state of California. And then it could go from there to the state Supreme Court.
Okay. And do you have any idea about how long it would take for the case to be considered in those venues?
Typically, well, because this case involves a bond invalidation action, and that's the California Family Bioethics Council case.
Right.
We only have 30 days to appeal as opposed to the normal 60.
Right.
And then I would suppose that the Court of Appeal would try to move it along like the trial court did. But we're talking about months.
Okay. The ICOC hasn't been able to sell its $3 billion, any part of its $3 billion in bonds while this case is pending. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think as a taxpayer, I think it's great, and I think that's one of the things that most of the coverage of this case misses, is that we're representing two taxpayer groups with long histories in California. I can be against embryonic stem cell research and also against being taxed, and I think it's great that my tax dollars aren't being spent for this.
Okay. Can you say anything about how much your side of the case has cost and how much the state of California has spent in defending the ICOC?
Well, our case is relatively inexpensive because the attorneys that are handling this case are doing it pro bono.
Okay.
We're a public interest law group, and we offer our services pro bono. So the costs and expenses have been pretty minimal. And then the Attorney General's case, last I heard, they had sent the ICOC or the CIRM a bill for about $250,000, and I'm sure that it's been more since then.
Okay. We're running out of time. Give us your statement about what you've learned and how you feel about this case right now.
Well, what I've learned is that if you happen to be politically incorrect, which I believe I am because I oppose abortion, that any other issue you raise, with small exceptions, it's always characterized as anti-abortion right, and I think that that's unfortunate because prior to working for Life Legal, I worked for a taxpayer advocate in the legislature. I oppose excessive taxes. I think they're oppressive, and I think that should be the focus of this lawsuit, and it's not.
Okay.
Because I have to have an unpopular viewpoint on an issue.
All right. Thank you for expressing your unpopular viewpoint on our show.
Anytime.
Okay. And let's keep in touch as this case continues to wend its way through the court system.
Sounds good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.